The story of the Teutonic campaign in medieval Two-Total War begins with the Livonian brothers of the Sword, also known as Sword Brethren, conquering most of modern-day Estonia and Latvia from the pagans. However, were much more disorganised than the Teutonic Order, who would arrive on the scene 24 years later in 1226. The Teutonic Order were a collection of German knights who formed and gained recognition from their fighting in the Middle East during the Third Crusade. They grew in power and were donated estates all over Europe. In the year 1226, the Duke of Mazovia in Poland requested their assistance. He offered more land, where they could build a front-line base. Acting out of their desire to continue crusading, they took this opportunity. It was also considered to be a good training ground for the knights, which they could use in future crusades in the Middle East. What followed was the conquest of the Prussian pagans. Welcome to Total War BackStory, a series that provides you with the basic historical background behind what you are seeing in-game, for those who may be a bit confused or want to learn the basics. The Livonian brothers, however, took a major defeat in the Battle of Saul, 1236. They lost 40 to 60 of their own knights, and even their leader, Master Volkwin. The band of knights hence incorporated themselves into the Teutonic Order, joined them. This gave them discipline, order, and the chance to be a part of something much more famous and powerful, and in return, the Teutonic Knights expanded their territory greatly. This is why, in-game and historically, the Teutonic territory is mostly split into two separate spheres. The people that defeated the Livonian brothers were the Samogilitans and the Semigallians, who were part of the Lithuanian culture. Lithuania at this point was not one unified power as we see it in-game, but rather a collection of small groups of pagan tribes. The Battle of Saul and union of the Livonians and Teutonic Knights bought these Lithuanian people some time to prepare, which they used to push back on the Christians. A civil war broke out, and the Duke of Southern Lithuania, Mindaugas, allied with the Livonian section of the Knights. Mindaugas promised to convert to Christianity and surrender Western Lithuanian territory to the Christians in return for military aid. He won the civil war with this aid and became king of a mostly united Lithuania. This happened in 1253. So technically in-game, Lithuania should start off with a Christian ruler. In a way, Christian ruler. Yet he later denounces Christianity, and the wars begin yet again. So although the game starts in 1250, it is really showing it a few years later. And that is where the game begins. Historically, what would follow is a lot of fighting, and in 1385, the leader of the Lithuanians would marry the Queen of Poland, and then Lithuania would convert as part of that marriage deal. By around this point, the other powers we see in-game began to grow wary of the growing Teutonic presence, even the Holy Roman Empire. It was the Poles who welcomed the Knights in to help with the Lithuanians, yet it would later be the Poles and Lithuanians working together who would come to force them out, to remove the growing threat. Novgorod was also wary. Just 8 years prior to the start date, the Teutonic Knights tried to expand into Novgorod territory. Novgorod beat them back at the Battle of Ice in 1242. Although, come to think of it, Russians beating back Germans 1942 on ice. Yeah, that kind of fits as well, but 1242. Although Novgorod had halted Teutonic eastern expansion for the time, they took many losses also, and expected another attempt in the near future. And now Denmark, a major trading power in the Baltic, they had extended themselves to places like Estonia to extend their trade influence and to put an end to Estonian raids, who were hurting Denmark's trade power. Had Denmark, taste of your own Viking medicine there. The growing power of the Teutonic Order put pressure on the Danish trade, challenging their former monopoly. However, eventually they sold the land to the Knights in 1346. Although these powers did have their own history at the time in this region, the Teutonic Knights and the Lithuanians are the main focus at the start date. The other factions mentioned already stay back a little and play their part later. But there is one more faction to get into that I've not yet discussed: the Golden Horde, the Mongols. The Mongol Empire was incredibly large, yet was split into 4 segments upon the death of Genghis Khan 1227, yet still held intact until the year 1242. They attacked and conquered much of Eastern Europe, including Novgorod. However, not Novgorod. The leader of Novgorod seemed willing to sign a deal with the Mongols to avoid invasion. They were subjugated and forced to pay a heavy tax, yet were spared the Mongol wrath. This took place in 1241, which is interesting because there is no showing of this vassalage in-game. Rather, in-game it goes for a more balanced approach, showing the Mongols as weak, a crumble in power, especially compared with the Mongols in vanilla. But this is not Total War Profiled, where we look into the accuracy of nations. This is Total War Backstory, where we look into the basic historical background of factions and events, and try and explain how things got the way you see them in-game. And that is all for the Teutonic Kingdom's expansion, from medieval to Total War. I have been MELKOR. This is a part of a long series now with many episodes. Feel free to check them out on the channel. If you like historical Total War content, consider subscribing and maybe also sharing this video with anyone else you think may be interested. Hope you enjoyed, hope you learnt something, but until the next one, tomorrow's video, goodbye.